Traditional development on Ethereum is hard, and only a few skilled developers know how to do it. To enable DeFi to become mainstream needs a new approach. In this episode, I talk to Jakub and Ben of Radix, which is a different approach to DeFi. They have interviewed thousands of crypto developers and come up with a unique solution that can scale to millions of transactions a second and uses a vastly simpler system to build unhackable DeFi applications. We also talk about the future of crypto and how the tech needs to be made invisible before it can go mainstream. Enjoy the episode. Welcome to Kastoshi. Today we speak to Ben and Jakub of Radix, a layer one smart contract platform. So guys, could you start by introducing yourselves?
Yeah, sure. My name's Jacob. I'm the community lead at Radix. It's my job to look after the Radix community socials, a few of the outreach programs that we've got.
Cool. And my name's Ben. I'm head of partnerships at RDX Works. I've looked after various aspects of content, partnerships, and exchange and market maker relationships.
Okay. And could you give me the 2 to 5 minute introduction to why anyone should care about Radix and what you're trying to achieve in the world?
That's a great question.
So maybe I'll. Would you like to take it, Jacob?
No, you go ahead. I think we're going to a lot more than 5 minutes. It's going to be a whole podcast by itself, I think. You open up, when you wind us up, we're not going to stop.
All right. Okay. So everyone kind of, when they get into kind of Bitcoin, or at least many people, when they get into Bitcoin and blockchain and have that kind of light bulb moment where they kind of like can kind of like see the future and understand what kind of impact this technology is going to have on the world, that they have kind of like a mini revelation around the impact that this technology will have. And so that there's a lot of promise around Bitcoin. There's a lot of promise around Ethereum, and there's also a lot of promise around DeFi. But a lot of it is just promise. And so what Radix is all about is really looking at the actual underlying fundamental, both technological and business problems associated with basically having these underlying technologies be able to fulfill those promises. But actually, we've taken a long time to kind of get into the detail, work out exactly what needs doing, and we focused over many years on fixing those problems. And so it started with a look into the underlying kind of scalability problem, and we spent many years researching how to basically take blockchain technology and scale it to the point where it would have a ability to kind of be basically able to scale to the mainstream and scale to everyone. But then after like 6 or 7 years or so of that, we then kind of went back to the drawing board, and we realized that through interviewing 1,000 or so DeFi developers, that the biggest problem holding back the adoption of DeFi and crypto wasn't actually scalability. It's the developer experience. And that is because the smart contract platforms that basically underpin DeFi today didn't have DeFi front and center when they were being designed. And so these platforms are kind of general purpose tools. And like any kind of general purpose tool, it can do anything, but it doesn't do it particularly well. And so we spent the last few years focused on improving the developer experience. And so what is Radix all about? It's a layer one smart contract platform. We could see the promise of kind of underlying blockchain and crypto technologies. And we focus relentlessly on building out the fundamental technology that's required to basically scale DeFi to that next level, which involves a brand new kind of programming paradigm called asset-oriented programming that has assets like tokens as like a native feature, a DeFi engine that kind of manages how those assets work, a programming language called Scripto, and then thereafter, after we've kind of delivered those over the next 9 months or so, we're then going to progress to our scalability solution, which is basically a sharded form of our consensus algorithm called Cerberus. So that's kind of what we're about. We're a layer one smart contract platform.
Okay, so you're saying that when you looked at the problem, you saw that the problem is how to develop for smart contract platforms.
Yeah.
Okay. I listened to one of the DeFi download episodes, by the way, and I've listened to a lot of the stuff by Reggie Middleton. So officially DeFi was invented by Reggie Middleton, according to himself. And I haven't read enough of his white papers yet to confirm or deny that, but you're on mute, by the way, if you're saying anything. Jakob, you're on mute.
Reggie's that was a really good interview. I think Piers really enjoyed that one as well. There's a lot of good philosophical questions there. I think of who can own DeFi, who can own finance. But yeah, Ben is completely right. Like we're focusing on like a lot of the core issues that you see when you speak to developers, and you realize that there are a certain amount of hacks and exploits in crypto and DeFi at the moment that can be changed by or that can't be changed in Ethereum at the moment, but can be solved by a new development paradigm. Like Ben said, it makes it really makes a lot of sense to start from there and work forward.
Yeah. Okay. So what year did you start, by the way? What year was it?
Radix. So Radix has really good history. So the core of our company was founded probably 7 or 8 years ago now by a guy named Dan Hughes, founder. It was born out of Bitcoin Talk forums. I think some of the initial e-money, it was called then, some of the initial e-money threads predate Ethereum. And it has grown slowly out of there over a few different iterations. Radix developed a range of sort of core technologies focused on scalability, none of which that were particularly what Dan or the company was looking for or had limitations, particularly around bottlenecks and around the sort of key concepts of composability and atomic composability that they deem would be, essential for DeFi to grow at scale. Radix as a company is really, Radix as a network. Radix works as a company is where we're known now. Has had a real key focus on DeFi for probably the last 3 or 4 years. And is sort of moving through some really exciting parts of our roadmap now as we come towards smart contracts in January, February, March, Q1 of next year. Okay. So it's been a long history, long story to get to this point.
Okay. Now you said that the key thing that you've differentiated yourself is developers. So this is related to the language you've made called Scripto, and I've looked at it and I can see it's got this very like object-oriented feel to it. Where you have interfaces and classes, and you call them assets, I believe, isn't it? So did you and tell me if this is going too deep technically, but did you at any point think, why don't we try and build this on top of Ethereum or the EVM?
So obviously the EVM has first mover advantage. It's got the lion's share of DeFi today. But over the last 3 years, we've taken a very methodical approach to building out our product roadmap, and that involved interviewing nearly 1,000 developers in Web3. And the overriding problem that they all kind of spoke about was the fact that the developer experience is just not very good. And I've thought about it, and effectively, the reason for that is because a programming language like Solidity, in fact, most of the paradigms, the programming paradigms that we have for kind of Web3 and DeFi today, takes a very similar model to the way in which the existing financial system works, in that each different kind of smart contract has effectively 2 things inside it. It's got a bit of logic that says what this thing's doing, and then it's got a list of accounts and balances that defines who has access to a specific token. So a smart contract you can think of as like a machine that has a list of accounts and tokens. So you could have a Zubair token, for example, and when you build your smart contract, there'll be Ben has 10 Zubair tokens and Jacob has 5 Zubair tokens, and you as a developer solely responsible for implementing all of the logic that defines when those balances can change. It's like a spreadsheet. If I gave you like Excel and told you build a token in Excel, you've got all the flexibility in the world to build your token using Excel. And it's really powerful. You can build something really quickly. And so that's kind of what Ethereum looks like today. It's what nearly all the smart contract platforms look like today. They're these smart contracts sitting on top of the platform, like Excel spreadsheets, and the developers are solely responsible for building all the logic with all the different balances that get updated. And these contracts send messages to one another. So it's like, okay, can you please deduct 10 from this account and add 10 to this other account, for example. So they're sending messages across to one another. But imagine a kind of world of finance where you've got 1,000 different developers all building 1,000 different tokens, all in Excel. Each one is going to be pretty much unique. They're building it in their own way. People are human, developers are human, developers make mistakes. And so the slightest small mistake in how a particular piece of logic has been coded could potentially have disastrous results. And that's why we've seen $3 billion worth of DeFi hacks over the last 2 years, because the smart contracts that define all the logic of DeFi, that define how the assets behave, those smart contracts are built from the ground up by these developers. It's kind of a bunch of different cottage industries because every smart contract's different. So why did we not go with that approach? Because whilst it's flexible, the platform doesn't give you any kind of features around how you should be building tokens, how you should be building smart contracts. It's this kind of like this really flexible kind of tool. And so what is Scripto? Why is Scripto different? Well, Scripto is asset oriented. If you want to create a token in Scripto, you just call the platform with what's called a native function call. You say, hey, Radix platform, please create me a token of supply 1,000, divisibility 18, and I want to put the first 1,000 tokens in this particular vault here. And the platform goes and creates it for you. And that token then lives and is controlled by rules defined at the platform level. And you get all the security around how the platform manages that token. So instead of the token living as an account balance inside someone's smart contract, which the developer created from scratch, like the spreadsheet, on Radix, the token is this thing that's controlled by the underlying platform itself. And you have much stronger guarantees around safety because the platform at a consensus level guarantees that these tokens can't be drained without the right authorization, that if it gets sent from one contract to another contract, the platform guarantees that tokens don't go missing along the way. And so with these kind of innate tools in place, developers can basically ignore all the hard work that it takes to create a token in Ethereum and all the validations and all the testing and all the security around that. Because to manage tokens, to manage assets, to send assets, you're just asking the platform to do these things for you. So it's kind of analogous to building a computer game in the 1990s, in that if you wanted to build a game in 1994, you would have to build the underlying physics engine that creates the substrate upon which your game lives. You'd have to create the graphics engine, the rendering, the low-level optimizations around how your game interfaces with Windows or Mac OS. And so game engines came along in the late 90s, like Unreal and Unity, and they massively saved developers from the headache of having to recreate the laws of physics every time they wanted to make a game. Now today, if you want to make a game, you just spin up Unreal Engine, and Unreal Engine gives you this whole suite of tools to create the game that's in your mind, and your time is then opened up and freed up to just focus on creating the game. And so what is Scripto? What is Radix Engine? Well, these are tools that enable developers to forget about having to recreate the laws of finance and token logic every single time. And instead, they can just focus purely on DeFi functionality because the platform handles those kind of common underlying features that you'd expect every single kind of Web3 or DeFi application to have, which is the secure management of assets.
Okay, I like that answer. So I agree with the game analogy, having been a developer in the 1990s. But I think the analogy I liked the most was the EVM can be compared to Excel. and I saw how business intelligence basically took over the entire enterprise landscape because it was just too complex. Even though Excel is everywhere, it's so easy to make a mistake. One of the things I'd like, I know you talked about smart contracts and having like when you store values in a smart contract. Just for the sake of our listeners or viewers, could you explain what you meant by a vault and how that might be different to data stored in a smart contract?
Oh, good question. So vaults are a Radix specific term. Now you have vaults in Ethereum, but they're completely different. It's just they just somehow use the same word for two different things. Effectively on Radix, like our kind of approach to tokens is kind of flipped on its head. So on Ethereum, a token is a balance that lives inside a smart contract associated with a particular account, and all the tokens for a particular token live in that one smart contract. On Radix, a smart contract, in fact, every user of the Radix platform will have their own special smart contract account components that lives on Ledger. So if you're a Radix user, you will have your smart contract that basically holds what are called the vaults. And you'll have a vault for each type of token you have. And you basically have all your tokens. So say if you have the Zubair token, you would put all the Zubair tokens inside your vault. If you have Ben token, you'd put all your Ben tokens inside your vault. And those vaults live inside your smart contract. And so unlike Ethereum, a single smart contract could hold 10, 20, 50, 100 different types of tokens. Whereas on Ethereum, the token itself is defined by the smart contract. And so what this kind of change in model gives you is the ability to kind of give assets and tokens this kind of physical-like behavior. And I could then physically take the tokens from my vault and ask Radix engine to basically pass those tokens to you. It becomes this physical thing where you're passing tokens around physically as guaranteed by the engine. And we think that makes DeFi development way more intuitive, because if you were to think about how you would build a DeFi D app, you would intuitively think about, I've got some assets here and I'm giving them to you there. You've got assets there, you're giving them to me here. That's how we kind of just intuitively reason and think about how these systems work. But in the Ethereum world, you've got all these kind of like lots of different accounts and balances and having to send messages and update lists. And because you can't actually hold your own tokens in Ethereum, all you do is have your private key, which can prove that it's the owner of a particular account that sits inside someone else's smart contract. There's all these extra complications associated with that because you're reliant upon the kind of methods and the logic inside that smart contract. And so the kind of complexity kind of increases significantly as you start composing multiple different contracts together. And even the best developers find it hard to keep up with that because it's just so complex. Every single contract is kind of bespoke. And this is one of the root causes of why we have so many kind of hacks in DeFi today.
Okay, I think I'm getting a better picture in my head. So basically, if we compared, for example, Ethereum and the EVM to like machine code, you would be like the equivalent of Java or Python in that you've got much higher level constructs. I'm working it out in my head as we speak. So, and I'm guessing the reason you couldn't have done what you're doing on top of the EVM is because it's so low level and because it's the transactions are at such a low level. It would just be too, like, you could do what you're doing on top of it, but to do something that might take like a millisecond in Radix might take like an hour in Ethereum or half a day.
I'm not quite sure I'm able to comment on the speed of execution. I know we're definitely quite efficient in that regard, but I think like the key difference is that tokens, the Ethereum platform only knows what the ETH token is. That's the only token that the Ethereum platform natively understands. All the ERC20 tokens, all the NFTs, they are developer-made tokens. The Ethereum platform doesn't know what they are. The Ethereum platform just knows it's a 5. It just knows it's a 10.
You have to have a smart
must
contract.
follow the rules of the developer.
Yeah,
it's like ERC20. It's like Excel. Yeah. It's like Excel doesn't know what the numbers in your spreadsheet are. It just knows that you said that this particular cell, if I change it to a 2, then I have to multiply some other cell by something else or whatever. I put the formula in, and Excel just follows the logic blindly. So that's kind of what Ethereum is. But that means if the developer makes a single mistake, then the Ethereum platform will just blindly follow the rules, because Ethereum doesn't know what these ERC20 tokens are. They're just a number inside the smart contract. And so the difference is that on Radix, the platform knows what an asset is, because it's got assets that needs a first-class feature of the platform. And so you get all the protections afforded to you by the platform itself.
So would you say that Radix is aimed at a very different developer? For example, when I started out as a professional developer in the early 90s, I was a C++ developer. And when I go and work in the industry today, and I work with people who are professional developers, often I think, oh, and it's very snobby of me, I know, but often I'm like, hang on, these people don't know the first thing about software development. But I'm actually wrong, because software development has changed, and it used to be for tech heads like myself. But are you saying that Radix is for someone who doesn't care about, diving deep into, into like being a low-level coder? They want to program with these easier primitives. Is it a different market almost as well? Because today the people who are attracted to Ethereum development, you've got to be pretty mad like myself and maybe yourself to actually want to code a smart contract, because it's so hard with so much stuff to test, so many gotchas.
That is you've absolutely nailed it right there. Like, some of the core things I think our chief product officer talks about for smart contract and DeFi to really be able to scale is like development needs to be easy. Like, it needs to be safe. They need to be reusable, and they need to all be composable. Like, you'll hear us talk a lot about sort of time to talent for a Solidity developer. Like, it's a very stressful job, and they're rewarded handsomely because of it. But if it takes you 2 years to get up to the point where you are a proficient, confident Solidity developer who is creating these beautiful smart contracts to run complex transactions, and then it's suddenly managing $1 billion worth of funds, like there's the implication gets very serious very, very quickly, and the actual pool of people who can do this stuff gets very, very, very small. So for DeFi to scale, we're not out here competing and trying to get Solidity developers. We are looking, anybody is a DeFi developer. People who have not even touched code are getting into Scripto and are working their way through the first few chapters of Rust and going through very, very quickly to be able to release blueprints and release smart contracts built with Scripto. Now, just imagine that, like, over the world, every single university student that's going into school at the moment, going into finance at the moment, who sees finance in a completely different way, suddenly has the tools and the power and the ability to create the financial institutions, the parameters that they want to use. They're not inheriting it from anyone else. Anyone that's ever built a website, anyone that's ever done any sort of software development, the barrier to actually become a DeFi dev has now been lowered so much that we see the huge opportunity for like a new wave of. I think we don't actually know what's coming. That's probably one of the coolest bits about it. Like, what happens when you give these very, very powerful intuitive tools to young software devs? Who knows what they're going to create? Like, it's absolutely fantastic. It's very, 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 very exciting to see what's going to come out over the next few years once it's sort of rolled out and in everyone's hands.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, for me, that's what could be exciting. I wanted to dive in a bit. I want to dive a bit into the tools that Scripto have and some of the features. But before I go there, could I ask, what's your thoughts on Radix compared to Definity and Solana?
Ben, this is probably a good question for you. Like, this is a really complex question, I think. It goes into some of the core consensus and really get down in the weeds here. I don't think it's a kind of an easy way to just. It doesn't have to be easy
because it doesn't have to be an easy answer because I know that Solana and Definity are both saying, "Oh, we're going to make it easy for developers." I mean, I know Solana had, it's written with Rust, and it's, you got to be. It's not that simple to code, but they're both trying to give the same promise, And I know Solana's had some traction, so I don't mind if you have to dig deep into the weeds a bit.
Okay, so
Yeah,
I'm not super familiar with Definity. I know they use different words, such as I think canisters for smart contracts. I know there's this potential requirement for validators to be like the size of a data center. I'm not quite sure if that's absolutely true, but other than that, I'm not too familiar with Definity. I'm more familiar with Solana, so I can probably speak to that. And I think they just take a slightly different philosophy. So Radix has kind of taken its time. It's been slow and steady. The project started in 2013, and then it took 7 years to kind of arrive at its consensus algorithm, which is called Cerberus. Whereas Solana's philosophy is more kind of just like let's go for absolute speed. Let's build things. Let's ship our mainnet in beta. And if some things break, well, then we're learning, and we have to move fast in order to gain traction. And so you can argue for both philosophies. Solana's been tremendously successful. It's huge in the NFT market. It's got a great burgeoning DeFi ecosystem. And developers are loving, I think, their implementation of Rust. More so, I think, well, maybe a lot of developers are liking their implementation of Rust over, say, something like Solidity. And Solana is obviously scalable. They take a philosophy where they're like, okay, composability is super important to us. That means we're not going to shard and we're not going to have layer twos. We're just going to push everything down this one pipe and scale the single shard layer one as much as we possibly can, and then rely on things like Moore's law to ensure that Solana can continue to scale with these kind of beefed up validator requirements. So philosophically, they're quite different to us. Whereas we take things slow and steady. Scripto is also based on Rust, but we've basically added a bunch of new features that make assets like this native physical resource that you can interact with via native function call. And then in terms of scalability, our philosophy is also different because we recognize that pushing everything down a single pipe has limitations because you could never process more transactions than a single computer can. There is just this fundamental physical limit that if you're processing all transactions on a single node because it's a single shard, then you're stuck. You're stuck with the processing power of a single computer, and you can never process all the world's transactions on a single computer. Yeah,
sorry to interrupt.
Which is
Solana processes on a single node, whichever is the active one. Am I correct? Isn't it?
So all the Solana validators, they all are in consensus with one another, and will have the same state once transactions have been processed. So every single transaction gets processed on every single node on Solana. That's kind of like the definition of what a single shard is. And they have a very clever way of kind of like making sure that their throughput's super high with proof of history and the way in which they can kind of like organize all different threads. But ultimately, it's a single shard. But the Radix model is different. We recognize that sharding is the only real solution to scaling global scale DeFi. But what we spent 7 years doing was finally coming up with the insight that the solution is actually to have what's called cross-shard composability, which is where each independent shard can actually talk to one another and agree in an atomic way. Either it all happens or it doesn't happen on the state of a particular transaction. And so Radix retains that kind of core feature of being a single composable network, but is sharded and therefore isn't limited by the processing power and network capabilities of a single computer. You can kind of just add more computers to the Radix network and it continues to scale. So that's kind of like the difference in my view.
So are you saying that if you have a transaction and part of the transaction executes on one shard and another on another, and that transaction fails, or it either fails or succeeds atomically with? Okay, great.
Absolutely, yeah. Wow. So all transactions on our future. So this is not our Babylon release in Q1 2023. What we're talking about is the Xi'an release thereafter. And under this release, this is when we shard our network. And after we shard our network, then every transaction actually then becomes cross-shard by default. And in fact, some transactions, depending on the complexity, could involve multiple different shards. You can involve 7 different shards or even greater potentially. But
okay. Okay. Could I now move on to? I guess this is also what allows the performance of Radix, isn't it? That you're sharded in this way.
mm-hmm.
Because I mean, the numbers on performance are quite astounding.
A theoretical performance, yeah.
Okay.
So
okay.
it's theoretically linearly scalable.
Yeah, Ben's written some excellent content on this, and we'll drop it to you after. If you look on the Radix blog and search Cerberus infographic series, it's some very, very deep stuff. But Ben breaks it down really, really well. So it'd be good sort of resource for anyone that wants to dive into that further.
Okay, great. Okay. Okay, so the next thing is going into the Scripto language. So you're saying you want to be developer friendly. Now, like if I talk to someone who's a smart contract developer and I talk about Scripto, and one of the things they'll say is, okay, how can I test it? Or they'll say, if I deploy something, you know, can I use MetaMask? So these are probably objections you've probably discussed already, and I'm guessing that the answer is going to be that the audience for people who make Scripto applications are going to be enterprise. So it might not matter whether they use MetaMask or not, but I'm still not sure. I want you to surprise me with the answer because I'm guessing.
So I think you might be surprised. So our strategy right now is very much a grassroots-led approach. We think that that's the best way of gathering a really enthusiastic and committed community of developers by focusing on this grassroots approach rather than targeting enterprises or rather than targeting existing DeFi apps in the first instance. Because if you think about it, if you're like a large corporate and this company comes up to you and says, hey, do you want to build an application on our network? And they're like, okay, what apps do you have already? And because we're a new paradigm for programming languages, our answer would be, well, actually, we don't have any apps just now. The programming language is still in development, but by Q1, you'll be able to build your new DApps. So if you're like a large corporate going through your various different layers of governance and management committees, I'd say there's probably quite a high likelihood that they would say, it's far too high risk. It's not been proven. There's nothing there that we have that really demonstrates this is worth our while. It's too risky for us. And so what we need to do is basically get that grassroots community of developers to start building amazing applications, and they're genuinely interested. They're going to share the word. And then once the initial kind of like beginnings of a DeFi ecosystem have been built by this grassroots community, and people can actually see that they're real DApps that work well, and it's super easy, then you can, I think, target the more established players and get more interest that way. So our approach right now is very much target the kind of grassroots Scripto community that we currently have, and in fact, it's growing quickly. So if maybe Jacob could share these, but we have some amazing quotes from developers who are just kind of blown away by how easy it is to build in Scripto. And we've just recently passed in the last couple of months 2,000 clones of our GitHub repo. And so if you think about a report from a company called Electric Capital on developers in Web3 estimated that there are around 20,000 full-time Web3 developers in the world right now, out of a total population of something like 27 million developers, so 20,000. If we've got 2,000 clones of our GitHub repo, that's kind of like 10% of all the Web3 developers in the world. Now, that's not a fair comparison because someone cloning a GitHub repo doesn't mean that they're a Web3 developer. They could just be someone who's curious or whatever. But I think it's still quite encouraging that we're seeing this kind of level of growth and interest and enthusiasm.
It's growing. It's growing rapidly. I think it was it's gone up from 400 or 500 to 2,000 in the last 3 months, less. Like it's getting some absolutely fantastic traction, some fantastic reviews, and is very, very exciting to see all these issues that people have been complaining about for a long time finally going towards the direction where, okay, maybe there is a solution to this, maybe there's something different, maybe we can do this, maybe DeFi can work, maybe DeFi isn't broken. It's very, very cool.
Is this also because everyone started to build serious stuff in the bear market as well, hopefully? So
yeah, they always say that, don't they?
Yeah.
Like the best things come out of a bear market. Like when a certain demographic of people are gone, when the market's down, the people that stay and build through, it's you are committed, you are dedicated. But like I said, like it's not even about, we sort of mentioned before, it's not about people that are currently in the market. It's about people who are bringing into DeFi from outside of it. We don't particularly care who's here right now. We want to get the other billion people to come in and start paying attention to it. That's when you'll see some real change, and you'll see some, DeFi, if ever has a chance to go mainstream, needs to break out of the little DeFi crypto bubble that we're in at the moment, and bring some new faces in, which is a big focus for us.
Okay, so since you're basically making life easier for developers, what do you think of things like Moralis and Infura, where they try and build extra tools for DeFi developers? Because one of the things that surprised me when I started getting into smart contract development was 90% of the work was still on the front end. There was still, like I'm guessing, like if someone still has to build like a web app front end. Like when you have I guess the question is, what tools do you have, like debuggers and a JavaScript, like GUI tools, or like how do you play in that space?
Probably a little early for that, I think, right then.
Yeah, I'm going to have to actually say that I don't actually know the answer to that question. Sorry. I'd have to check.
Okay.
Yeah,
it's a good question.
It's a good question. Hard for us to comment on. I think from what like a lot of what Infura is doing is very, very cool. Still, if it's on top of the EVM, then it still doesn't solve a lot of the core problems or issues that builders are going to have. Scripto is at version 0.4 or 5, maybe 5. So it's still sort of very early in the journey, which is quite cool. Sometimes when we look at it, see such progress, we've got to sort of pull ourselves up a little bit and realize that we've still got a lot of development to go, and it's going to get even better. So that's probably a good question to circle back on this time next year and see where we're up to and what's been released.
Okay, when someone wants to interact with Scripto, though, do they like if like in the Ethereum world, I can interact with it either via my server or from the web browser because I've installed MetaMask or something. Do you have the same equivalent thing? Like, do you have your own version of something in Google Chrome I have to install, or is it just via the server? What was that?
So we're going to have a wallet, which as an end user, you'll be able to interact with the apps written in Scripto. Okay. I am confident that there will also be services that enable developers or anyone to plug into smart contracts written in Scripto via some form of RPC or other kind of API. Because that's really the only way that you can kind of build quite a lot of automation. I would assume that some of that is provided by a combination of potentially third-party services, but I'm not sure if that answers your question.
Okay, yeah, I mean, if you're going to have a wallet, that would have to be something which is similar to MetaMask, I'm guessing, and maybe you have a standalone one as well. Yeah, I did notice like you have companies like Notaros which build on top of what you're doing, so I can see you're building like an ecosystem with other companies as well. Do you have like one of the issues I've got with Ethereum is, even though there's a lot of tools for it, debugging it can be a pain because you have to debug across so many smart contracts. How do you is the debugging experience? I mean, you probably know this yourself. It's quite a bad debugging experience in Ethereum. Is there do you have logging or debuggers or step-by-step, debuggers in with Scripto?
Oh, again, this is probably a level of complexity in terms of technical complexity beyond me.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I have to push it as far as I can, but
yeah. Next conversation.
So let's go to
our chief product officer just woke up in an absolute sweat about the answers that we're about to give, and we so please, for the sake of our jobs, we will plead the fifth.
Okay. what is, like, you've told me something about the feedback from the community. So what sort of things I don't want you to mention any specific names, but what are the types of applications people are building with Radix at the moment?
I mean, it also is very, very early. Like we are 9 months away or so from our Babylon release. The development in the ecosystem at the moment has been really quite stunning. There are, I guess you put them in two categories. There's like projects that are intending to build, intending to release to Babylon. People starting projects now, despite the fact that smart contracts are so far away. Normal things like NFT projects, DEXs, DAOs, lending protocols, absolutely everything is in development at the moment. We are a little early away, I think, from being to the point where a lot of them are like announcing all their big releases. We have such a strong development community. They are putting together even like centralized DEXs on the moment based on the infrastructure we have now instead of waiting for Babylon. Like there's a lot of incredible things going on. I think last count there was 130 or so projects intending to develop or at some point of their development. They will all progress at different rates through to potentially releasing on Babylon, but because of the distance I think between now and actual smart contract, it's hard to give an exact number on who's doing what or what. But it's a lot of the similar dApps you're going to see on every other protocol. I think just the journey to get there is a lot faster and a lot simpler with the Radix tools.
I think it's always difficult with new technologies. I mean, I saw this with the Cardano community. There was a lot of development going on in the background, but until the projects come out, it's very hard to, like, you know, because a lot of the public just sees, oh, I use like Uniswap, or I use this, or I use that, but you know, but they don't see the long development time that's happened before that point.
And it's one of those things. Like a lot of developers won't make big claims about what they're going to release in 9 months. One, they don't want to tell people what they're working on. They don't want to show the code, or they just need to, you know, actually work it out and build it, and then release it first. Like we've seen a lot of very quiet, very solid development going on. A lot of them wanting to keep it a little bit quieter until they get closer to Babylon to actually announce it, or they want to go through more testing. Once again, it's kind of the part of the roadmap that we're in with the Scripto language as well. Still, you know, working towards being fully released, which, you know, fully locked in towards the end of the year. So up until that point, every few months, new features are getting released for it as well. So it's kind of hard to commit, like, this is our finished product, this is our finished build, because the program language itself is still in development. So it was one of those ones that'd be really good to revisit this conversation post Babylon, so you can actually sort of see the result of a lot of this.
Yeah, I'd love to do that. Okay, so I've just got a couple of questions left, really. One of them is, so in your ideal world, what would things look like in 5 years' time for you guys?
Oh, that's a great question.
Like for Radix or DeFi or
No, not for DeFi in general, just for your company. Like how would you have changed the world?
Oh my God, Zubair, what are you doing to us? No, how would you change the world, man? Okay. Like, that's really nice. So it's going to be hard for Ben and I to sit here and give claims of where Radix is going to be in 5 years. Like, that is like a high level strategy decision. At the moment, we're working through our roadmap. We've launched the base network. We've launched the developer tools. We're working towards smart contracts. From there, we're working towards building a scalability with our Xi'an release. Like, in terms of RDX work, that is our single focus. A more of like a personal level where we'd like to see Radix or like to see DeFi in 5 years, we give more of a personal opinion. But I mean, we are so laser focused on delivering our roadmap that, you know, making a claim right now, what's going to be happening in 5 years is just, it's you know, it could be a complete guess for us. And a lot of it depends on whatever happens with each release and whatever happens as we go along. For me, I would love to see the user interfaces and general usability of DeFi dApps increase dramatically. Like, I would love to see my mum be able to log on to a banking style app and be able to provide liquidity, to be able to move assets in and out, and her not even know she's using the Radix network or using DeFi. Like, to get this to the level where this is synonymous, not even DeFi, it's just finance. It's my dApp. Like, my mother had access to a higher level of yield in a safe, usable manner without her having to wrangle a MetaMask style wallet, and then sort of see it roll out from there to more and more and more people till we can actually hit true DeFi scale.
I like that answer, actually. I do like it, because you want the technology to be invisible, which is as it should be.
100%. Nobody cares about the technology at the end of the day. Like, if it works, perfect. Like, that's what we want to get to, right? Like, that would be my absolute dream.
I think on
It's
a
like
technical... Oh, sorry, go on.
Sorry, no, you go for it, mate.
I was going to say, on a technical level, the way I see it in my head is, I always think of Unix and in the like 1970s and CPM, and I saw how Windows came along, and they basically they just ate everyone's lunch by being. I mean, how did they win? They basically made developer tools which were so much easier to use that even though Windows itself is a piece of shit as an operating system, they beat everyone. And so that's how I see it. And then Visual Basic came along, and it opened up the market to people who who didn't know they were developers but wanted to get stuff done.
Exactly. That is the most exciting bit of this whole enterprise. And I always touched on it before. Like, we're in contact with a lot of university students, with a lot of people getting into DeFi development. Like, there's a huge amount of like brain power out there that's being underutilized. Like, at the moment, like to call yourself a DeFi developer seems like this massive, huge thing. Like, you've gone through all these wars to get there. Like, what happens when 1 million, 2 million, 3 million, 5 million people are DeFi developers, and you even at that point lose the moniker of DeFi developer? You're just a developer, right? Of this particular dApp. Like, you have this idea for this thing, or in your head, this is how this should work, and you do it. Like, you see the issues that we've been through from 2008 up until now and before that, and in your head you see a solution, and guess what? You can do it. Or you're a business student, you don't know how to code, but you start looking at it, you see the feasibility of this here, and you can describe your problem to any of the millions of people that are able to do it, and it gets done. Like, we will break out of this somewhat probably stagnated development environment at the moment and see some things, like I said before, that no one is even going to see coming. Like we've seen, in crypto every few years, nobody saw this coming. There's always this one moment, nobody saw this coming. It's bang, ICO boom, bang, NFT boom, bang, like the DeFi summer absolutely comes through. Like, these first iterations of things will explode, go away, and then something better will grow out of it. And we're kind of seeing that with DeFi now. Like, we had a go at what we think it might be. Potentially the tools weren't there. Potentially the users weren't there. Potentially the infrastructure wasn't there. It's kind of like retraced a little bit and gone away. And what will come out of it is going to be something absolutely huge. Like we said, the same thing with ICOs. We're going to see the same thing with NFTs. Same thing with DeFi. Same thing with many blockchain applications. And it's never been more clear to me how very, very, very early we are. And it sounds like a bit of a meme at this point. People saying, "Oh, we're early." We're really, really early. Ask anyone on the street what DeFi is, and you will not get an answer. Like, this is still very, very early in this whole journey.
Yeah, I mean, I'm often asked about people to explain crypto for like normal people, and I'm just like, I just say, look, crypto is not going to matter to you for another 5 years for anyone who's not deep into IT. I say it's just not going to matter. We are early. We're so early. I agree.
Very, very, very. Like, it'll ask a lot of people like into like deep, like who. For instance, I got a lot of friends love NFTs. Don't have a clue what network they're on. Like, which is cool, but like, that's like, we're still very, very early. Like, and that's part of the way that you get to like onboarding mainstream. Like, to me, that is like a great bullish sign. Like, all these people who never have ever rocked with crypto love this one parameter of it, don't particularly know what's underneath. That's fine. That's part of our move to mass adoption. Like, it's exciting. It's an exciting sign. Obviously, we would love them to have a better understanding of what's underneath and why it isn't particularly safe for you to store your NFT on this particular A1. But that's probably like the next step we can get to, right? Like, it's just happy that we're here right now.
Okay. Yeah. So, sorry, Ben. I think you were going to say something, but then we kind of.
Sorry, I get
it. It was a minor point. I was just going to say that whilst we were talking about the point around how technology should be invisible, if you were to stop 100 people at the supermarket as they're using their card to pay for their groceries, how many of those 100 would be able to tell you what's going on at Visa, MasterCard, the payment acquirers and payment processing companies? Like, probably none of them would be able to actually tell you what's going on in the background, right? Because you don't need to know, because technology should be invisible. So it's just another example of, yeah.
And they don't care either. If you told them, they just tell you to shut up.
They don't care. And that is the end goal. Like, the end goal for a lot of it is to create technology that nobody will care about. That's how we know we've won. And that's probably a really, really kind of rough outcome for a lot of people. But like, that's it. That's the goal.
I think crypto will be successful when it's not called crypto anymore.
That's the thing. Like, decentralized finance, traditional finance, like, you kind of run parallel at some point. Guess what? They're just going to meld, and it's going to be, pick a name for it. It's okay. Finance.
So I think I've got just one more question now, and you've kind of gone into some bits of it, but how do you? I've asked about your company's vision of the future, you know, as regards to what you're doing, and I'd like to know where you see, like, how crypto and all of this stuff is going to change the world. Like for me, for example, one thing I think is that we're going to have like little passports, and we might, like, for example, try to like scan our code to go into a shop, and it might say, sorry, you're too poor. Yeah. and I think there's going to be some things which are going to be a bit dystopian. And also, I think like things like ID, I think we're going to end up with, like at the moment you have mobile phone shops everywhere. I think we're going to end up with ID shops, and there'll be government sponsored ID shops. So whenever you lose your keys, you get the government to reset them or whatever, or give you a new code.
Geez, I hope not.
Oh, I really think that's going to happen. I can already see it happening.
Yeah. Potentially.
So what's your view of the world in 5 years or 10 years?
I really hope that doesn't come about. Like, I believe in the sort of philosophical idea of a decentralized, open, permissionless, trustless network that gives everybody a chance to have control of their own asset, control of their own funds, and control of their own financial future. There is going to be certain parts of various governments that are uncomfortable with that. I think we've seen a little bit of that at the moment with the recent tornado cash furor. We've seen it kind of go over and over again with people targeting SushiSwap and other DEXs. We've seen a lot of governments very uncomfortable with the idea that there is a group of assets or a monetary system outside of their control. They would be silly not for them not to exert a lot of influence over crypto generally, to try and rein that in, try and get control of that. I think it's going to be a very interesting time. I think, I like the idea of DeFi and decentralization, having control of my own identity, right? Like the kind of general concepts of Web3. Like, I want to control my own data. I want to control my own identity. I want to control my own finances. I don't want you to be able to sell that data. I don't want you to be able to access it. I don't want you to use that to target ads to me or to a particular demographic. I think we have a lot of work to go. We once again are still early. Like, I would love to see more work done or some cool stuff come out for proper decentralized front ends for a lot of these products. Like, a lot of these things we build on open centralized networks are cool, but if you can't access them, if your internet service provider is turned off in your country, what are you going to do there?
But this is also supposed. Oh, sorry, go on.
No, there's a long battle ahead. I think.
Yeah, I think, because I sometimes look back to the internet, and a lot of the promises of the internet basically got commercialized, and we got more Big Brother than we'd ever imagined with the internet. So no one is going to be able to tell you where this is in 5 or 10 years. No one saw the birth of the internet. No one saw, a couple maybe, but no one saw this high speed broadband streaming. No one could have envisioned the way you can market ads or target ads to people and deliver a certain message and manipulate giant sectors of the world, by doing that. No one kind of saw the changes that social networks would have, or the way they'd have the ability to change the course of an election or any of these things. And no one saw. And it's the same thing now for DeFi. Like, same thing. No one knows where it's going to be. No one knows what it's going to look like. I think we're more cognizant of that these things are possible, and the decisions we make now
can sort of reflect down the years. So something we need to be more cautious of. But yeah, I would be hoping we can avoid a lot of the more dystopian kind of fantasy book things are potential. We have a lot of governments talking about CBDCs and whatever else they're doing. It would be unfortunate if the government could control how you spend your money, whether I buy milk, cigarettes, or alcohol. Like it's unfortunate.
Yeah, I mean, I don't hope for that future. I mean, the only place where I see it happening, not just because of government. I mean, for example, myself included, how many people do you know who are supposedly crypto experts which have lost money in exchange hacks, for example, and stuff like that?
DeFi is embarrassing. I'm embarrassed by DeFi today. How can you ever convince anyone to put money into this system with the billions of dollars worth of hacks going on at the moment, or how complicated it is? I had to sit my dad down for we tried to get him to buy Bitcoin. Like, it's a long process. It is unacceptable. We won't scale until we fix that. I can't ask anyone to take DeFi seriously until we can, limit the amount of exploits and hacks that go on. And Ben gave some really good answers as to how Radix is going to do that. But yeah, it's got a, like I said, sounds like a meme, but we're still very, very early.
And what about you, Ben? I want to put you on the spot now as well.
In terms of my vision for the next 5 years or so, or longer. So this is just my personal opinion. But the way in which I see just kind of the world moving from a kind of like global macro scale is that I am incredibly concerned about climate change and our impact on the environment. And so if we as a species wanted to be able to kind of address the climate, and we're going to have to find new ways of consuming things, because the current way that industry consumes the physical resources of the world, the current way that consumers consume the physical resources of the world is just not sustainable. And so we're going to have to find new ways of basically enjoying ourselves. And so I think that you're not going to change people's innate human behavior. People still want to compete with one another. Like over the last 100 years or so, people have competed with one another by buying a bigger house or getting a second car or getting a yacht. And so you can't get rid of that innate human need for competition. But with an escalating crisis associated with our consumption of the Earth's resources, what DeFi and Web3 does is it creates a kind of new playing board. It's a new substrate upon which people can kind of still compete with one another, but we're competing with one another in this digital world, and it's not consuming the resources of the world. So if you have a $400,000 CryptoPunk, that's still like a sign of prestige. It's like you can still compete with people. And as the metaverse and VR experiences and things like deep dreaming become ever more kind of like advanced, then people are going to spend more of their time in this online world, and they're going to want to compete with one another in this online world. And you can still kind of have your own personal kind of status within society, but you're not kind of chopping down 1,000 trees to do so. You're doing so in this purely digital world, and Web3, DeFi, crypto is what will kind of enable all of that. So kind of that's a slightly different perspective, but it's one thing that I'm hopeful for this industry can do for us.
Okay, yeah, I hadn't thought of that. I mean, I'll admit that I like when I think about like the environment, I don't believe in a lot of the doomsday scenarios, because I think technology will solve some of those, and I kind of take like a very holistic approach of, and I can't say I care about it, because I'm not trying to solve it, to be honest. If I'm not trying to solve a problem, then I have to admit it means I don't care about it. And by the way, you have a plane in your background with the logo on it. So, but yeah, I mean, but I don't think flying, actually makes so much difference. But I've not really heard that. I've not really heard that. So that's actually, though, an interesting take.
It's perfect. It's what this was like. Like, crypto is made to flex on each other, right? Like the owning this digital real estate, owning this $500,000 monkey picture as your PFP, like it's a perfect way to sort of like the next level escalation out of material items, as Ben said. Like it's the perfect way forward for it.
Yeah,
frontier.
Yeah, I also think that, yeah, I mean, like crypto enables a lot of other things. Like when people see crypto today, they might just see like DeFi, but there's actually a whole bunch of other stuff it enables, like downloading NFTs so you can locally print like a pair of sneakers or something, for example. So, and it's a lot. I think crypto's a way to make a lot of that stuff a lot easier as well, to prove you have ownership of something. So.
Yeah. It's the perfect way to prove you have ownership of something. The best use cases for it.
Okay. Okay, so I think that's all the questions I've got. Do you have any links, or do you have anything you'd like to share? And don't forget, we have audio only listeners for the podcast as well, so that I can share it with them.
Yeah, that's
where
fine.
can people find you?
I'll send you through a few links if you can include them in the description. If you want to learn more about Radix DLT, you can find us at radixdlt.com. On Twitter, we are at RadixDLT. If you search Radix_DLT on Telegram and on Discord, you'll find us as well. We are the verified Radix DLT on Telegram. There's a little blue dot next to us. There's a few imitators out there. If you're interested in Scripto, if you're interested in exploring more about development, come and see us in Discord. We have a few great Scripto channels there, starting from the most very basic Scripto class of 2022, which takes users through the students through the first sort of 10 chapters of the Rust handbook, and then graduates on to looking more deeper at Scripto. There's some other deeper Scripto channels there where our developer ecosystem team is present every day to help troubleshoot your issues. From the main Radix website, top links on the top bar, you can check out the developer documents. We have a load of YouTube content diving into all of these things we spoke about today. Ben has written some fantastic content on why DeFi is the future of everything that we do, that you can find via the blog. He's written some excellent work on our Cerberus consensus mechanism, and every Tuesday we have a fantastic series coming out about how Radix can solve various problems in DeFi. So every Tuesday they come out, so you can find them via our blog and via our Twitter account as well. And if you have any questions at any time, you can drop them in our Telegram or in our Discord as well. The community is more than happy to answer at any time. A lot of the core team are active in there, and we have a great moderation community that will help guide you in any direction possible.
Okay, sounds great. And do you have anything further to add, Ben?
I think Jacob was quite comprehensive. So
yeah, it was. It was. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, thanks a lot for your time today, guys. It was very interesting for me, and I'm going to look further at Radix myself, of course. So thank you very much today.
Perfect. Thank you very much.